Justin Savio asks, hi, I want to find out why Catholic priests are permitted to marry. I bet that's supposed to be aren't permitted, are not permitted. Good, that's in the next comment there. And the long formation process. Good question. Yeah, so the reason why Catholic priests are not permitted to marry is there are a couple different reasons. The first one, and the deepest one, the most theological one, is because Catholic priests are called to conform themselves completely to Christ, who was not married. And so if Christ wasn't married, then we choose not to be married as well because we want to be like him. And actually, there's something to Christ choosing not to be married that is very attached to his sacrifice. It was on the cross that he consummated the sacrifice and opened the gates to the heavenly wedding banquet. Specifically that sacrifice on the cross is very wrapped up in marriage imagery, because that sacrifice is constitutive of how Christ is the bridegroom to the bride, the church. And so not only did Jesus, do we want to imitate Jesus on a very superficial level, but also we want to imitate him in that sacrifice that he offered for the church. And so that's why at least Roman Catholic priests are not married. Ordinarily, there are some that through a complicated process, if they're not Catholic first, then they convert to Catholicism, then they can still be married. But Roman Catholic priests are ordinarily chosen from celibate men, which means unmarried men. There are also some really practical things. First off, I'm worn out. I don't know if I have enough time to care for my parish and a wife and kids and all of those things. One person only has so many hours in a day. And so it allows Catholic priests to dedicate their time more fully to the parish. And so in a certain sense, it allows us to give of ourselves more completely in love to those who have been entrusted to us. And then not only that, but then, so there's kind of the time restraint, but there's also the priority question of, if your child is at home throwing up and someone is in the hospital dying, who do you care for? Do you leave your child at home by himself throwing up, or do you go to the hospital to anoint and give the last rites to the person who's dying? I mean, that's a hard question to ask of the father of the child. And yet the priest needs to go. There's no question that person is dying. They need a priest. And so in order to really give a clarity of priority to the priest, that really, God is first and then the people entrusted to him are second, that gives that freedom to the priest to really keep his ministry first. All right, and then the long formation process. Yeah, the reason for that is also it has a few points to it. I think the first one is because you need to learn a lot. As a priest, your responsibility is to form generations of people. You form the elderly, you form the adults, you form children, and you need to form them to the point where they are able to form other people. And so if you need to be well formed enough to be able to form someone to form somebody else, you need to really know your stuff. Plus, there's very little oversight for priests. Very rarely does the bishop have any idea what I'm actually preaching about. Really, only whenever he gets an angry email, which doesn't happen very often, does he find out what I'm preaching about. And thanks be to God, I'm in the Diocese of Tyler with Bishop Strickland, and so when he gets an angry email about me preaching something that's Catholic, he just kind of puts it in the archive folder and lets it go. And so there's very little oversight, which means that we really want to make sure that the priests know what they're talking about and intend only to communicate what is true. Because if the process was very easy, first off, you could have the problem that somebody doesn't really know the truth, and therefore when they stand up and they preach, they're preaching something that's false. And then the other problem is that they may know what's true, but they may not be convinced of what's true, and therefore they get up there and preach what is false because they don't agree with what the church teaches. And so during this long formation process, the church wants to make sure, first off, that you know what is true, but also that you're completely convinced of what is true, so that you can continue to hand on the faith in a way that other people can hand it on as well. And then the last piece has a lot to do with the formation of the human person, that you receive a lot of formation and you have a lot of support during those 6 to 8 years in the seminary, but really after that, as a priest, you receive very, very little support. And you're really kind of thrown out there. You feel like you're swimming with sharks. Or I guess pasturing with wolves is maybe a more biblical image. That there are so many things in our culture that really attack priests, and it's difficult to be a faithful priest. And so the church wants to make sure and really equip us very, very well, so that when we do get out there and we're fighting the fight, that we're able to be victorious over all of the attacks that the devil does throw at us. Good question there.